Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome to Daily's 2A News. This is a video that I honestly didn't think I was going to have to make, but apparently it is. The Supreme Court has completely let us down once again and has denied all 10 Second Amendment cases that were sitting before it. All 10 cases. These involved cases from Massachusetts, Illinois, California, carry laws, concealed carry laws, open carry laws. It had to do with assault weapons ban, magazine capacity limitations. It had to do with California's handgun roster. I mean, there were some pretty significant cases there, and they denied all 10 of them. I mean, take a look at one of the timelines just to show you guys what happened here so you can see exactly what they did. They got these cases a while back, then they kind of sat on the cases as they reviewed them and different things were submitted and so forth. And then when they decided to, take a look at them, they were punted. And then after weeks of waiting to see what was going to happen, they denied all of them. I mean, it's absolutely astounding to see how bad the Supreme Court has gotten. What's interesting is you take a look at some of the dissenting judges. For instance, Judge Clarence Thomas was a dissenting judge who said that he believed that the Supreme Court should take up some of these cases, said that in certain instances in these cases, there's no way the court would have denied these had they been challenges to the First Amendment. He said if somebody's First Amendment rights were being infringed upon in certain states and the case was brought before the Supreme Court would have heard it without a doubt. But because it's a Second Amendment right, the Supreme Court decides that they're just going to drag their feet and then drop it. And so we basically got no justice from the Supreme Court whatsoever, who is supposed to be there to make sure that the law of the land is upheld. And in this case, they did the exact opposite. They allowed these circuit courts to make decisions that are clearly unconstitutional, and then once they got to the Supreme Court, they simply kicked the decision back down. So, for instance, in Pena v. Horan, which is the California handgun roster, they obviously got denied at the Supreme Court as well. That's just being kicked back to the lower court's decision. And so you can see that there's no justice for the Second Amendment here, and I mean, it really just it puts us behind decades. That's the way that I see it. It puts us behind decades. These things take a long time to get up to the final court, which is the Supreme Court. And so, you start off in these lower courts and then it goes up to the circuit court, and then, there's time for appeals, and then those appeals have to be heard, and then maybe it's heard by a 3-judge panel, and then, then you decide to hear it en banc, and so the entire circuit court decides to hear it, and then after that, and that decision's finally made, then it'll make its way up to the Supreme Court. That takes years. That means that if a new case is going to be filed in any of these, it would take forever to get back up to the Supreme Court. I mean, it is incredible the injustice that the Supreme Court did to the American people here, not even at least hearing it. I mean, we're not talking like they made a decision where they decided that these laws are constitutional and so they're going to stand. No, they just said, we're not going to hear it. We're not going to listen to it. We're just going to go ahead and kick it back down, and we're not even going to waste our time with it. What do you got next? That's kind of what they said. I mean, could you imagine if any of the other rights were infringed upon or denied in most cases like they are in all the 10 cases that were sitting up there? Could you imagine? The Supreme Court would be all over it. But when it comes to the Second Amendment, it's treated like a second-class right. It's treated like it's not important. It is a constitutionally protected right, second only to the First Amendment. And it is the only right in our Bill of Rights that says shall not be infringed. However, it seems to be treated like a Second Amendment second-class amendment. It's just absolutely ridiculous, and to be honest with you, the Supreme Court should be ashamed. Obviously, you had a little bit more conservative judges who think, that we should have heard certain cases. A lot of these carry cases seem to be kind of important to those judges, but not one of them, not a single one. So I hate to make this video. I hate to bring you guys the bad news because, to be honest with you, it's terrible news. But that's what happened. They came down and just basically kicked all of them out. Not going to hear a single Second Amendment case. That means that since, 2008, 2010, we haven't had any movement on the Second Amendment from the Supreme Court. You have the New York case, which came across the Supreme Court's desk recently, and they decided to hear it, and then they decided to punt it because New York made some small changes to the law. And so off that case went, and they allowed New York to manipulate the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court's being manipulated, they're allowing themselves to be manipulated, and then they're showing what their stance is on one of our constitutionally protected rights. Absolutely terrible. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. 10 cases clearly showing that in the United States our Second Amendment rights are being infringed upon, and they could care less. So, again, I hate to bring this to you guys. I really do. I hate bad news like this all the time, but that's what happened. I want to thank you all very much for watching. Please like, subscribe. Have a great day.